Hello and welcome to WNHH Radio's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. Today we're just going to graze over some local headlines and focus on local music. We do that from time to time, catch up with some of the stories we're reporting in the New Haven Independent and elsewhere, little context, and then hearing some local musicians and recordings they've made, some new, some older, like the one we're listening to right now. Every day's opening music on Dateline New Haven, the Afro-Semitic Experience, a great local group. They're playing Eliyahu Hanavi, which is what you're hearing in the background. Last night, that was Monday night, the school board was looking at some ideas of how to close a pesky deficit, starting at $30 million. And no matter what they do outside of like firing all the teachers, they can't figure out how they're going to get that deficit down. And they know they're going to have to make tough choices. Somebody's going to get mad. But they're trying to figure out how not to hurt kids or hurt teaching. The latest idea came last night, and it's a switcheroo. We're building a big new $36 million school on the campus of Southern Connecticut State University. It's going to be called the Obama School, named after our former president, or in my case, my current president. And it's going to be having a teaching theme. It's for K-8. It's going to replace the Strong School, which isn't even at the Strong School anymore. It's in the Hill with the old Morrow School. And it's going to have a theme of teaching. The idea is that it's on the campus of Southern. Some of the teaching students at Southern, trying to get their certification to teach, will participate in the school, and they hope they might plant the bug at some of the kids. They become older, maybe they can become teachers through the local teaching force. It's a cool school. It's going to have room for 490 students. However, only 220 students attend Strong School, so the people on the board ed said, hey, maybe this is an opportunity. Maybe we can close one of the school buildings that we have that have a few hundred, because there are a bunch of schools that have just a couple of hundred students in them, like 200-300, as opposed to some of the bigger high schools. And maybe we can consolidate that into an Obama school. Don't know if they're going to do it. Another idea, just to close schools, period, or have some other schools consolidate. So stay tuned, folks, because that's one of many choices they're going to be putting forward, and in the end, they're not going to be able to avoid some pain. So now, but on the opposite level of pain is intense musical pleasure. I'm going to switch now to a video from one of New Haven's great local artists, Tabiza. I happen to run into her. She lives in Westville. She moved here from South Africa while her career was already starting, and she's going great guns. Told me she might be at Arts and Ideas this weekend. Ran into her on my walk in. What a treat. And she has this wonderful video we've been playing on high rotation here. The song's terrific. She filmed it in South Africa. It's called Vula, and here we go on WNHH.
Yo, 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 oh, 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 oh. Diti vula, yang ose. Diti vula, yang ose. Onabo toti, onabo laita, nabo toti, bayan suge. Nabo toti, onabo laita, nabo toti, bayan suge. Ditibula, ditibula, ditibula. Yang os, ditibula, ditibula, ditibula. Yang os, onabo toti, onabo laita, nabo toti, bayan suge. Gong 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 gong, gong 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 gong. Gong 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 gong, ay 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 ay, oh oh oh, gong 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 gong. Kawuvulela mnyango wakho, kawuvulela sango lakho, kawuvule dingene 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 bo. Hai kawuvulela mnyango wakho, kawuvulela sango lakho. Ayani sugela 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 tati bo. Yeah 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 yeah. Dum 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 dum. 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 Dum 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 dum. Dum 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 dum. Dum 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 dum. Dum 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 dum. Yeah. Scum diggy dim diggy down. Scum diggy dim diggy down. Scum di dabu do 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 dabu. Scum diggy dim diggy down. Scum diggy dim diggy down. Scum di dabu do 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 dabu. Avulelo mnyango wako, kawuvulelo sango lako, kawuvule dingene bayandi sukela bo. Yeah 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 yeah. Kawuvulelo mnyango wako, kawuvulelo sango lako, kawuvule dingene 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 dingene. Dum 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 dum. Dum 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 dum. Dum 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 dum. Ay 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 ay. Woo woo woo. Dum 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 dum. Dum 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 dum. Dum 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 dum. Whoa. Kawuvulelo mnyango wa.
Westville's own Tabiza and Vule. Man, I love that song. She, by way of South Africa, had started a recording career, moved here a couple of years ago, taking New Haven by storm. That's at high rotation here at WNHH FM, your home for community radio, 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. I'm Paul Bass. You're here on Dateline New Haven. We usually have guests in the studio, but today's our occasional feature, local headlines, local music. We look at some of the stories in the New Haven Independent and other media, and we also intersperse a little light commentary, sort of sprinkling a little salt and maybe occasionally some oregano on the dish, and then really hearing some local musicians who have put recordings out recent and a little further back, because we love we can be completely biased about that. I will tell you that I love Tabiza's music. I love Steve Mendick's music. You're going to hear Afro-Semitic Experience, Foresters, Composer. You're going to hear it all today. Meanwhile, we were talking about the schools and we were talking about tough choices about budget. At the same time, New Haven's public schools are going to embark on a quest to make some tough decisions about the directions of education itself, separate from the budget, separate from buildings, which is how we want to do school reform 3.0. So every once in a while, when you try to shake up a system, you put some new ideas in place, you run with them, and then they get a little stale. Either you got to revive them or think about how the world has changed, what you've learned from the experience, how to do it again. We've done that with community policing in New Haven, starting in 1990. We cut crime a lot. It would creep back up. We would adjust what it meant to work in partnership with other agencies in the community, how to win the public's trust, how to get officers to know the people in their community, how to have accountability. And, right now we're sort of in a community policing 3.0. And they're talking about how to do school change 3.0. In about a decade ago, we embarked on a nationally acclaimed, always watch out when you hear that, nationally acclaimed school reform model in New Haven. We had a great idea, which was that teachers were going to be part of school reform. There was all the school reform mania in the country that divided everybody. It was either the charter schools funded by Wall Street titans or not, or fighting those kind of changes and privatization by teachers unions, which had originally come up with the idea of charter schools as small labs, experiments where teachers tried different ideas, but they'd been hijacked by what had previously been a movement to have vouchers and privatization of schools. But there were a lot of good ideas on both sides, and New Haven tried to combine them. So we negotiated school reform in 2009, 10, and 11 with the teachers union. And we did something the charter schools want to do, which is hold teachers accountable. And if they're not doing well, get rid of them. Because when they tried to do that even in New York, it was more corporate under Mike Bloomberg. They still had their hands tied and they were these rubber rooms where teachers they thought were no good, they couldn't fire them. They kept them just doing nothing and paying them full salaries for years and years. It wasn't nice for anybody. What we did in New Haven was we came up with this great idea where the teachers would be part of the team that evaluated how other teachers were doing, and administrators. And then if a teacher wasn't doing well, you didn't fire the teacher. You got the teacher help to do better. So most teachers would do better because teachers said, look, we don't want to have bad teachers. We just don't want arbitrary rules where somebody doesn't like you, so they claim you're doing no good and they fire you. But then the other teachers, there'd be a couple dozen every couple of years, still weren't doing well. And they left. And the amazing part was that no one sued. There were no fights. We just helped more teachers succeed. I know it sounds like La La Land, Kumbaya, but it actually worked. We had other ideas too, including Promise New Haven. It's a great program going strong with the help of the Community Foundation of Yale to guarantee students who do well in school here show up, get involved in the community, and do well in their work or well enough that they get their way paid in state colleges and universities. Great program. But, it got a little stale. We tried a 2.0, which experimented with something called a portfolio model, which means a lot of things to a lot of people, sort of the way community policing does. Does it mean that you give principals more autonomy to try different stuff at their schools, but then close their schools if schools aren't doing well? That became divisive. We brought in someone named Garth Harris, who helped design as assistant superintendent our first school reform plan. He became superintendent. The schools got political. We had an election that got more political. And some of his real achievements did get drowned out, but he also didn't sell his stuff well. And for instance, he tried this breaking up Hillhouse High School to several schools, which actually, that was controversial. An old guard kicked him out of the system, which cost a lot of money. But in fact, there was progress at Hillhouse. The governor came down and said had tons of progress. But any change, School Change 2.2 didn't become the big success the first one was. And there's a feeling the schools are a little stuck now. We've gone through several changes in leadership. We have divisive politics, grumbling a lot of schools, some of which, like Barnard, have gone through principals who haven't done well pretty short term, and then some who do well there in other schools have been in Fairhaven as well, have been plucked by the suburbs. There's just a sense, you don't have to just copy what we did before, but we're going to try to reinvent school change and give it new energy. Part of the argument is about what portfolio schools means. Does it mean great autonomy and experimentation for teachers with some accountability? Or does it mean a corporate model of closing schools and worrying too much about metrics? And you know what? I'm a little agnostic in that stuff. It's sort of how I feel now about community policing. The word has sort of lost some of its important, firm definition. And maybe what we need is just good policing, good people there, accountability, do the job well, not as much hype. Just a thought. But then again, I do want a little hype here because there's three young men, some teens in New Haven, Co-op High and Hillhouse, who have a new doo-wop trio. That's right, doo-wop. My music and my parents' generation music. And they brought it back. They do it really well. A cappella doo-wop. They've been performing. They now recently went down to Maryland, D.C. area. And you're going to watch a video of them now, taken by the New Haven Independent. And these young men are called Composure. They're on their way, folks. And check out why.
I did you wrong, my heart went out to play. But then again, I've lost you. What a price to pay.
That was Composure, folks. A trio of teenagers who go to Co-op High and Hill House, and they're on their way. They got a great 3-night run at Pergamos Community Theater in Fairhaven. Recently, they went on the road. That video was actually from last year, and they got started. They got started through a program called Ice to Beef. It's a community anti-violence program. Gives kids productive stuff to do after school on the weekend. They have a whole center and all these different programs, including music. That's how they linked up, and the people in the program helped promote them. And they saw tragedy. You know, it's reality in our city. Their 14-year-old friend Terry Keys was shot dead in New Hallville. And they said they were motivated to sort of get involved with Ice the Beef and thinking about him when they do these concerts. And it shows the good that could come out and the way our community can pull together when we have tough reality on the streets to deal with. Meanwhile, you're listening to Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, here on WNHH 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. And we're break form today for our occasional local headlines, local tracks, songs by New Haven musicians, hearing interspersed with some of our local headlines. And in one of them, they happen to have been a lot about the schools lately. We care a lot about Education New Haven. We just talked about 2 school stories for the New Haven public schools. And last week, Tom Breen has a story. It's up there in the Independent, but a school that gets very little attention, but might very well be the great success story of New Haven. It's called St. Martin de Porres Academy. There used to be a St. Martin de Porres school for generations in the Elmhaven projects in Dixwell. That's long gone. A lot of Catholic schools are long gone, but this one got revived with community help, and it's in the Hill, where there used to be a church. Is no longer there on Columbus Avenue between Cedar and Liberty. It's been around about a decade. It raises all its own money privately, and it has all low-income students who pay no tuition. Very high-quality academics without some of the harsh stuff you hear about charter schools. But that's a fair debate on two sides. But it's not that kind of school. It's got a little bit of best of different models, and they follow their kids even when they're in college. And anyway, when we wrote about that, that wasn't controversial. What was controversial was the news about what they're doing now that they've been successful, and they've been anchoring a part of the Hill that has had changes and a lot of abandonment, including abandonment by the school there. By the church there. So St. Martin de Porres finally bought a building they have, which is a former church there. But to get that, they had to buy the whole block, which included a shuttered former church and a shuttered former convent. So now they got to figure out what to do about those buildings. They have some ideas. They brought them to the community, which is the right thing to do. And they honestly haven't made up their mind. They don't even know how much money they can raise. So they threw out some ideas. One idea was to renovate the former church and have it as a theater space, performance space, chapel, community room for the school. And then they want to do something that does make a certain crowd in New Haven go ballistic, which is knock down one building, which is a convent. They said we could use some hockey field there, soccer field, field hockey, basketball, and this is the thing everybody hates, parking, because people pull in. And some people said in the comment section, the Independent, well, let them park on the streets, and it's not easy to park on the streets there all day. But it's a good question. They say let's be careful before we tear down our history. So the people who comment the Independent, as usual, very interesting, brought the story to another level. A lot of love for the school. It's interesting. Nobody had anything bad to say about how the school works. It's a great anchor in that neighborhood, doing great by the kids. They say save the building. That's a complicated proposition because that could save a lot of money. It costs a lot of money too, including with historic structures. Unfortunately, it is sometimes easy to knock them down. And schools do need a campus. Unlike when you don't want surface lots in the middle of a city, you want to maximize density for the tax base for people to live, to have affordable housing. In some places, you really want kids to be able to run around outside. So it's not so clear. And God forbid, once in a while, you do need parking. I agree. We can go to our city should follow the route of Hartford and no longer require any parking on projects. We're building a different kind of city. It's a different era. But people drive in to go to that school and teach at that school specifically. But in any case, if they want to instead convert that convent into housing, that could be cool. I don't know if they'd have the wherewithal to do it, whether they'd be able to contract that out for affordable housing. What would that mean for what happens at the school? So those are really good questions. It's a really good debate. Kind of what I love about New Haven, because we do care about this stuff. I know I'm punting there because I'm not taking a stand. They should do this. They should preserve their building. They should knock down the building. I'm saying all sides are in good faith. A lot of important questions, the debates we have in our city. I think in the end, that's why, even though once in a while we get it wrong, we often get it right. You know who else gets it right is the Foresters. New Haveners, there's two brothers and then some friends. They started playing out when they were 11 years old as a band. They played at Idiot Village, our great festival, for a bunch of years on Picken Plaza. At 11 years old, they're now in college, high school, late high school and college. They put a lot of recordings out, original music that I think is terrific. They were here playing live once on Dateline, New Haven. They're popular among the music set in New Haven. We kind of seen them grown up. And I'm going to now play one of their songs from their most recent album. And the song is called Hospital Friends here on WNHH.
I drew a picture to honor it. 1, 2, 3. Just getting ready for accepting the fact that it's come to an end, but you'll still have time to make hospital friends. Oh, it's some kind of trick you play on us. I didn't know if you were kidding, but now it's come to be something out of reach. Not who we thought we would be. The road will get windy and tires will get muddy, and it won't change anything if you lose your car, but you'll still have time to make hospital friends. Being alone so very far from home is something I never felt, but I can adjust and you'll still have time to make hospital friends. Bam, bam, ba-da-da-da. Bam, bam, ba-da-da-da-da. Bam, bam, ba-da-da-da. Bam, bam, ba-da-da-da-da.
All right, Hospital Friends from the Foresters. Great local band. They're still in their teens. Done a bunch of albums. I'll tell you, the future is bright, folks. Just listen to some of these kids. Teenagers who are putting out great music. The Foresters, we heard Composure perform. And hear another band, early 20s now. Subterranean. Sorry, the suburban. And you're listening to that music and hearing local headlines today. Local headlines, local tracks on Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, and you're listening to WNHH 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. Hey, Marty Feldman, William Outlaw, you're listening and watching on Facebook. Thanks for tuning in the show, folks. And you were talking about our future. Christopher Peak has a story you can read on The Independent today about all these bilingual kids and biliteral kids in New Haven high schools. We have dozens and dozens of students from dozens and dozens of different countries, just alone at Fairhaven, dozens alone at Fairhaven School, which is K-8. The high school level, they're working on getting people certified. There's a new kind of certification, a seal of not just bilingual, but biliterate, which means you write and read well in two languages as well. And when the students, so there's a test you can take from the state And in New Haven, we've started working on that at Sound School and now Hill House and Cross to give that a go for some of these young people and help them tune those school skills. And they're so useful for jobs or just functioning in the world. And Nara Al-Zobi, I'm probably saying her name wrong. I apologize for that. She goes to Hill House. And she came from Syria as a refugee. Some of the 500,000 or more who have left Syria in the civil war fled for their lives. When she came to Hill House a couple years ago, she spoke no English. She now speaks great English. She translates for the family, as often happens first in a generation. She knows these young people do make us feel great about the future of our city. And she's studying for this test. And to do that, she had to brush up on her native language, on Arabic, because there are different dialects of Arabic and written differently, spoken differently away. And so part of what she's studying is not just her English and getting that writing and reading part of the facility with the language under control, but also her native language. Just an interesting thing happening in our schools. Something interesting happened in Hamden as well. But before we get to that, I'm going to play a track here from Suburban. They've also been live in the studio here at WNHH. There's also a brother act, as well as a bunch of other folks. It's Charlie Widmer and Fred F1 Widmer. They grew up, you found this in Mighty Purple and other local bands. When the brothers grow up together, sisters, siblings, when they play music, they anticipate the next move of their sibling in a way that almost nobody else can. Think of twins when they even know when they're states apart, how the one's feeling. I don't know if you've ever watched Johnny and Steve Rogers, Mighty Purple, the way they just kind of know where the next person's going to be going with a chord progression or a lead or a change in tempo. And it really lets the music soar. One thing I find interesting about the Widmers, so Charlie, who fronts the group, they write their own music. Charlie is also an opera singer. He loves R&B crooning and opera. He performs opera. He's done it around the world, actually, folks. And his brother, Fred, is a rapper. They combine that. I've seen them at Cafe 9. Very, very interesting act, very good act. They have a new-ish album they debuted here a while back called Everybody Knows. I want to play a track from it that I like. It's called If You Want to Fly from Suburban, WNHH FM, your home for community radio.
Yeah. If you wanna fly, if you wanna fly, yeah. Oh, to fly high above the trees. Being in the plane to me is just a tease. The calm of the clouds, the feel of the breeze. Life from up here just seems at ease. And any location could be our destination. No long travel or endless waiting. Down there there's hate, down there there's panic. And even though they try to explain, I'll never understand it. So just keep your eyes fixed on the horizon. Before you said to land, now you're saying to fly. The slingshot, no strings, only thing you got is my shoulder. You're down in hesitation, weighing down like boulders. Don't worry, we gon' get there. I told you, so just keep your eyes shut and hold on till it's over. So I spend every night with my eyes shut tight, praying that maybe one day I too could take flight. If you wanna fly with me, keep an open mind and ski. Open up your eyes and see. If you wanna fly with me. One night at my window sat a strange man. I asked his name and he told me he was Peter Pan. He started telling me about this place called Neverland, where you never age. And every day is a blank page, everything's an adventure. Oh, he said, I forgot to mention, I know that you will come, and please allow me to tell you why. If you choose to come with me, then I will teach you how to fly. I was so fucking excited I wanted to cry, but he disappeared and reemerged out of the corner of my eye, handed me a contract and a pen, told me to read and take my time and to sign on that dotted line. I said, nah man, I'm not trying to be famous. I'd rather be with my family and all remaining nameless. Because to me, this is the definition of flying. What he was doing was selling dreams and just lying. If you wanna fly with me, keep an open mind and ski. Open up your eyes and see. If you wanna fly with me, if you wanna fly with me.
If You Wanna Fly. That's our own local group, Suburban, the Whitney Brothers. From their latest album, Everybody Knows, which is also the name of the track you're hearing in the background. Because you're listening to local tracks and grazing through local headlines on WNHH-FM's Dateline, New Haven, 103.5, live streamed at New Haven Independent.org. So there's news in Hamden today. We've started covering Hamden in the New Haven Independent. We feel like it's part of our community in New Haven, Hamden. The mayor there has proposed a new budget that does something kind of verboten in today's political culture, which is to raise taxes. In New Haven, they bring out the pitchforks anytime you want to pay for anything in government. And he's only 1% or 1.6% increase for Mayor Kurt Lang. And he made his case last night for why to do it. They already have high taxes in Hamden, higher than New Haven. And his idea was partly he wants to beef up community policing a bit. Not tons of new money, but have a walk and beat, bike beat, have some community programs that the cops help out with maybe after school. And then he also wants to boost fire service, which is kind of outdated model when there's a lot less fire in the state, in the town. A lot fewer calls for service, excuse me. Boost library hours. But the biggest nut that Lang is taking on are pensions. Like a lot of city and state governments in this country, Hamden's has a pension crisis. For years, it just didn't fund its pension. And now it has huge debts. It's going to have obligations for people who retire. That's something they inherited. And there are different ways of dealing with it. Lang is saying, let's really deal with it. Let's fund the pensions 85% this year, which actually is high funding. Actuarial suggestions usually are as high as that. That's sort of the best they say you need to do, rather than have it at 10, 20, 30, the way a lot of governments have for years. But at the same time, he said, let's set aside money every year for 5 years and invest that money, let it grow. Use the word compounding. He talked about how, I think it was $100, Benjamin Franklin left 2 different states, or left Philadelphia, another government, and said you can't touch it for part of it for 100 years, and next 100 years, and they get tens of millions of dollars. He talked about how compounding, you invest a little bit in advance and it grows to a lot. He said, let's spend 5 years squirreling away modest amounts of money and let it grow and use it. And let's adequately fund our pensions in the short term, because you need to do that. Let's not make the problem worse. And let's invest in a 5-year solution that really tackles our problem. Now, in a high-tax town, in today's modern age, where it's hard to talk about issues with nuance, and it's hard to plan ahead, just like big corporations have, so many that are publicly owned have this pressure for quarterly results and often don't do enough investing for the future or making long-term decisions. Governments have that problem when it's so tough to talk about taxes. It's not a huge tax increase. It's $105 per average homeowner. But given how homeowners are already struggling with taxes in Hamden, it's going to be controversial. So while I'm not going to weigh in pro or con on it, I'm going to weigh in on the reason for it, the goal he's setting, and the debate begin, because the Legislative Council has to consider it. Justin Farmer, a progressive council member from Southern Hamden, he said he liked a lot of what he heard in the mayor's speech about partnering with other agencies and communities to tackle problems, but he had concerns about this pension idea, because he said, what if the mayor's not there 5 years? What if Justin likes this idea, but he's not there for 5 years? Can they count on future governments to solve the problem? The mayor said, we're not kicking the can down the road, we're crutching it. Justin's saying maybe it's sounding like kicking it to him. It's sort of like what you see the future and how far you see that road as well. Interesting debate in Hamden. You know, Steve Mednick is another guy who lives right over the line in Hamden, been very involved in New Haven over the years as a law practice here. He used to be a city alder and a city corporation council. He's had a second career in his second half of his life. After turning 50, put out so many albums. Almost every year he has a new album out. I think this is his 15th now. And it's new. It's called Enough. I really like it. There's some great tracks on this album. And one of my favorites is a lot of passion, a lot of social passion. They're very political albums. One of the songs I've been playing in high rotation. It's called What Are You Gonna Do? Or more precisely, when you listen to it, What You Gonna Do? From Steve Mednick at WNHH's Dateline New Haven.
Cowards in the halls of Congress, bending to the will of the NRA. They really know there's an answer. Hiding plain sight, they always get their way with this crap about thoughts and prayers. It's too early to talk about what's going on. They read from the same old script as they embrace the victim. Keep moving on. Why don't you look into the mirror and answer these questions I have for you? When is this gonna stop? What are you gonna do? What you gonna do? We're living in a horror story. Black jacket cops storm American school. Anguished parents press at the cordon, wondering if they'll see their children soon. As the media pulled their tripod, chasing the same story as it was the first time. Aerial footage of children on a mad dash to freedom with hands raised high. Just think of what they witnessed and answer these questions I have for you. When is this gonna stop? What are you gonna do? What you gonna do? As we reach the point of no return, we're in the center of storm, time's running out. I got my ear to the ground, listen for the wound in the universe. While searching for a place called home, we took a turn to a place called there. When is this gonna stop? What are you gonna do? What you gonna do? I hope she didn't die from nothing. Look at my eyes, cause the blood is on your hands. This has become the new normal. Why does this happen in our freedom land? Once every 60 hours, we lose more children in their schoolyards. When is this gonna stop? What are you gonna do? Are you gonna save our children? What are you gonna do? No more guns. No more guns. No more prayers. No more prayers. No more silence. No more silence. No more tears. What you gonna do?
What You Gonna Do? Steve Mednick asked that on his new album, Enough. I think it might have dropped already. He gave us a copy in advance, played some stuff on the radio recently. You're hearing more of it in the background as we go over local headlines, local tracks on WNHH's Dateline New Haven. There was a story in this morning's New Haven Register I found very interesting by Mary O'Leary. She's a great reporter. And she had a story about 66 Norton Street. That was an address that already sort of had some infamy in New Haven before it hit the big headlines last summer. It was known as New Jack City. Slumlords ran it, dead body found there, all that kind of stuff. And then last summer, there was a crisis how bad conditions were and stuff falling apart that they had to clear out. The building department condemned it. You had to clear out dozens and dozens of families on no notice. They had hours to take their belongings. And you know, we and the rest followed it in Channel 8 for a while, where they tried to find new homes for everybody. They got new apartments. Some of them cost more. Legal aid's been trying to get them help from the state. Mary reports this morning for the difference between what they're paying before and now. In the process, the state puts together a report on how they feel government dealt with the situation. And I was kind of surprised by the result. I'm not surprised when judges beat up the city of New Haven for their mishandling of lead paint in apartments from the health department. City's health department is broken. But I always felt one of the strongest part of city government was the Liberal City Initiatives team that sweeps in along with the building department when there's a threat to public health, and they work hard to get people new homes. And that night they started work out. They work with private landlords. And the thrust of the report was that the city relied too much on private landlords, or slumlords, depending on definition, and welfare motels, and should have had a plan in place more to deal with it, which I guess is a fair criticism. You can always do better. You can always plan more. But I guess I felt I was surprised to see that criticism in this case. But there was one part of the story that interested me more. You know, you sometimes read a story and it's not the central fact, but something pops up at you. So this report was prepared by the State Housing Department. The State Housing Department has a new leader. Her name is Sayula Mosquera Bruno. We know her well in New Haven because for decades she ran a nonprofit housing development company based in Fairhaven, but did work all over the city, Westville, the Hill, building affordable housing, did very well. And she is the new housing commissioner. So she came in after most of the work was done on this report, apparently, but she had to sign off on it. And she's close politically to the people who run the city. And one of her first acts was to sign a report excoriating the city in a creative way, taking a stand, not an obvious way. Because, I mean, it's easy. The judges who are thrashing New Haven in the courts, that's because it's such obvious failures there. So I think that says, whether or not you agree with the report, I think that bodes well for Sayula, because you want to have an independent housing department. You don't have to pick fights with local government, but you also want to be independent and set the bar high, which she did. Well, we've been trying to set the bar high today, as we do in New Haven all the time at Dateline New Haven. Thanks for joining me today for local tracks, local headlines. My name's Paul Bass. We're gonna take it out, as we always do on Dateline New Haven, with the Afro-Semitic Experience. And that's the dobro playing of the late Stacy Phillips. We all still miss him, but we get to hear him every day playing. The song is I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free, from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.